Welcome to the Ethics Experts, where we're elevating ethics and compliance and HR to the strategic level it's supposed to be.
Well, Ken, great to have you back.
Yeah.
We pulled it
Glad
off.
to be here.
I'm thrilled. We had a little bit of a dry run. We started talking for a good couple of minutes here, and it was a great episode. It was starting to be a great episode. So we'll just kind of recap a little bit.
Yeah.
So welcome. Glad to have you back. You're one of the few that are returning guests. And so you were on about a year ago. And why don't we kind of recap what we were talking about, and then I think we can pivot into sort of the meat of the show right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So last time we talked a lot about this like concept of how you raise the bar, how you modernize a compliance function. And we talked about going from, this idea of being a police function to more of a competitive, enabling, value-adding function. So not just information, but judgment, right? The risk assessments, all that stuff. And really partnering with the business. That's the key, right? Not just sort of going to your corner and being in your corner and doing your thing, but partnering with the business and making the business better. It's a tall task, but definitely something I see more and more of and have seen over, 10 years or so. And now we add a layer to it today, which is how technology helps get you there.
Yeah, that, we were talking a little bit about how like the bar that you have to get over to kind of take some of these concepts that we hear about or read about in blog posts or, hear about at a conference, these like great ideas, how to take those sort of, academic, concepts down to earth and actually put boots on the ground, actually, drive that impact forward is now lower than it's sort of ever been. So maybe let's talk a little bit about the pivot that you've recently done and how this kind of thing that we were sort of talking about in concept, a year ago and the last time you were on is now more and more a reality for folks to do exactly what you said, move from this policing function to something that's actually enabling the business, actually kind of driving more quality across all the processes, de-risking the company.
Yeah. So I kind of wandered into this all by accident. A couple of startup companies, they were developing AI-enabled compliance systems. In my case, product compliance, but I think it's all very applicable and things are moving along across many versions of compliance in pretty similar ways. And they came and they said, oh, we're developing this stuff. We see this gap that's in the market. There's really nothing in this space. Nothing particularly good. There's some old database types of systems, but we're going to put this thing on steroids. And I said, great, let me see it. And I went, wow, this is amazing. Like I literally just went, wow. Like I showed my wife, like I was just, wow. She does have a history of compliance, so she could appreciate it, right?
She appreciated it. Okay.
Yeah. But I think even if she hadn't been in compliance, she would have said, wow, this is amazing. I don't know what you're talking about, but never mind. So I realized though that these guys don't really come from compliance backgrounds. It's kind of interesting. They know that there's a space here, but it's not their sweet spot. So they're builders, right? They're building technology, they're building the company, but they don't know the clients all that well. And
right.
So I've been helping them understand what the client needs in this space. And I think that's been quite helpful. And then that kind of naturally got me to think about, well, then who's the client, right? And talking to people and saying, well, what do you need? Like, what's your version of AI? What do you think about it? And of course, I was met with something that I think we're going to touch on a lot here, which is almost paralysis, I would say.
Yeah, totally.
They're just like, they go, well, first off, I don't like it, right? Like it's new. I don't like it. It's going to take all of our jobs and it hallucinates. Therefore, I'm skeptical. I don't even know where to look. I hear a bunch of sales pitches. Like, I don't believe any of it. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. And if there's something available outside the box down the road, fine.
Right. It's kind of like when the steam engine came out, there were all these people that were like, human beings are not built to go faster than a horse can run. This is real. And there was this aversion to this technological advancement that obviously like spurned on or whatever, like kicked off the entire industrial revolution. And we're kind of having like a repeat of that moment from like a macro perspective. But then we're also seeing, to your exact point, this like aversion to it, this sort of Luddite mentality, and maybe I'm saying that name wrong, where, you know, I get that we're risk averse people. I understand that. And I'm not saying just to like dive headlong off the cliff, but the fear that we have of it, you know, this is a big objection, like the fear of it taking our jobs. What are you going to do? You know, I mean, and it's been so bizarre, not bizarre. Maybe it's just sort of natural, but just to be able to see this now, like ripple across these different industries. When AI first came out, what was it going to do? Well, you saw a bunch of stiff arms from, you know, copywriters, people who were writers. You know what I'm saying? And then because that's not real writing. And then it moved over to graphic design. And it's like, well, that's not art. And it's like, well, you're making ads. Okay. Ads aren't art. Okay. I think everything's art, but I'm just saying, like, so there was an aversion there. And then you start to see it kind of trickle its way up to white collar. And now you're seeing a lot of lawyers be really averse to it. And what's really interesting, I will bring this home in a second, but there are industries that are tremendously threatened by it, that due to their regulation, they can't access it. So they're almost in a little bit of a bubble. So think about financial planners or wealth managers. If you're at a legitimate wealth fund, they got that locked down. You can't put anything into AI. So then you're kind of in this world where like you don't know the extent to which your job is actually threatened, because this natural moat or this natural bubble that like you're living in due to the protections that your, you know, policies and your IT and whatever have like put in place so that you can't put anything into ChatGPT or whatever, is kind of starting to create a false sense of security. And I think those are the people that are like maybe most at risk. The next layer down though is those who just have a natural sort of self-preservation aversion to, you know, it's like the blacksmith who was like the town horseshoe guy. He didn't want anything to do with a car. You know, I don't trust him. Well, it's like, you got to do something. You got to pivot in some way. And I think the most conservative approach is to like embrace it. You know what I'm saying? Like if there's a big wave coming, I better like learn how to surf real quick, you know?
Yeah, so it's sort of interesting because I view it as a sort of a conundrum. Like I talk to clients and they say, you know, I say to them, well, let's like, I get your aversion. I get all that. Like, I don't know that I fully agree, but I understand where you're coming from. Okay. But then I say to them, okay, now let's imagine you can just create your vision, 3 to 5 years, build whatever you want. You have no restrictions. Build it. What's it going to look like? And they say, oh, well, you know, and they start getting to this thing that we talked about a year ago, which is like, well, I want to be a better service provider and I want to be this and I want to be that. I say, okay, great. That's wonderful. What's preventing you from doing that today? Capacity, resource.
Exactly.
Oh, okay. So you can't get capacity and resource. No one's going to spend an extra dollar on what we do. Oh, okay. So you understand though that like the answer to that specific issue is AI. And in fact, that counters the point that says we're all going to lose our jobs. This is the point that this is shifting the work that you do into a different type of work. And yeah, that takes some creativity and some real thought and some execution. But it's not this doomsday thing. It actually opens up. And that's the part, until people see it and start to really, they take that first few steps, they can't understand it. Once they do, the lights start going on.
Well, I think it starts to come down to like, if you really want to like deconstruct that from a psychological like fear perspective, I think it's kind of rooted in like what you define yourself by. So like, if you're a lawyer and you make all of your money, you know, you've hung out your own shingle and you're making all your money by being a contracts person and you're paying your bills by being able to write contracts, well, then you're naturally going to have, you know, what's that old Upton Sinclair saying? It's like, you know, a man can never understand something if his paycheck is dependent on him understanding it. It's like, if your paycheck is on making contracts, then of course you're going to be against using something that's going to, you know, that can, you know, embracing something that could like, you know, kind of affect your pocketbook. And so I think like if your identity is tied to it, or the picture, or if you've placed yourself kind of ostensibly in a box, kind of to your point of like, well, who I am and which of the constraints on development or growth are fixed versus those that are like movable, then you're gonna get kind of stuck. And I've seen this also with like coders. It's so crazy, dude. Um, I expected all coders to just be like, oh, finally, AI can do all the coding for me. And like the level of aversion that these guys have in a lot of cases, not all, but in a lot of cases, is so similar to, the copywriters and the graphic designers and the lawyers who are kind of threatened by it. And the lawyer points to the person who like lost their license from relying on a ChatGPT brief, and the coders point to AI slop and code and all that kind of stuff. It's like all those things are solvable problems. I think some people are scared to kind of get into that, from like laying bricks to getting into that abstraction layer that you talked about, sitting up above kind of all these tasks being done, because it's maybe uncharted territory, because it's kind of uncomfortable. You have to like engage in this creativity muscle, kind of to what you're saying.
Yeah. And it's funny because, this is what I do, right? Like as a consultant, this is how I work with people. And the goal is to help them take those steps.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't seem complicated. Like no one should ever have to spend money on this sort of help, except, you get caught in your day-to-day activities.
Totally.
There are all these fears and aversions. And if someone isn't gently nudging you forward and showing you a pathway to do it, I think most people simply won't do it. And the fear is like the real fear that I have in this is that eventually we all know AI is not like disappearing. It's here. So if you sit back and you wait, how long until your CFO comes to you and says, so I understand we can do this for half the price. Let's go. And now you've missed the entire moment
Totally
to transform into something that's actually better. And instead, it's just a cost-cutting exercise. Now, there may be cost-cutting that is a part of what eventually has to happen, but that's not the purpose, and that's not where the bulk of this is going to end up.
Totally.
But if you don't start now, like this is not something that you just flip the switch and it's on. This is an evolution. And quite frankly, I think it's something that will continue on forever. The technology will just get better and better. You will keep evolving with it. And if you don't start that process today, you're literally getting years behind, and you're putting yourself
100%.
in an unfortunate position and your team in an unfortunate position where you may not be able to save yourself. This would be the moment to save yourself. And I hate to say it like that because it's not supposed to be doom and gloom, but like it's a huge opportunity, but you're also protecting yourself.
Yeah, you're protecting yourself. You're creating the circumstances for your future success. Who knows what the future is going to look like, to your point, and who knows? Like we have some picture of like the far future, but you don't really know how far out from like today, time point zero, that far future is. And I think with this, AI proliferation, it's probably way sooner than any of us think, right? Like when the internet came out, there's that famous article where Paul Krugman was like, the internet's just a fax machine. It's just for faxing, and it's like, well, no, now it's in everything. Now, like, I can't even drive home without my GPS. It's in like it, I don't know. I don't have to kind of flesh that out. That's very clear to everybody. And if we use that as some kind of a picture, some kind of a corollary for what the level of proliferation AI is going to have kind of across all these things, then we have to kind of get out ahead of it. I read this article about the K-shaped economy. Did you see this by chance?
No.
It's basically like you can picture a graph, and then going off to the right, kind of two lines diverging, and it was kind of making the point that like at some point in the future, you're either going to be kind of orchestrating a bunch of AI agents, whatever, or if you still have a job, you're going to be working for AIs. So like now is the time, because like as time goes on and as those two lines diverge, the path to get from the bottom sort of leg up to the top leg is longer, harder, and whatever. And we do literally have this window right now where, back to your point from the start of the conversation, we can move out of the cost center thing to the effectiveness thing, to the adding value to the business thing, to helping the business go down the road faster. But it's going to take us like embracing this stuff. And to your point, getting some nudges from a consultant or a coach or someone that can help you kind of deconstruct this massive amorphous like risk thing. I mean, that's what everybody thinks about it. I don't want to get in that pool. I don't know how deep it is. It's like, we'll just get into it and start to, start in the shallow end. Like you got to start swimming around, or you're going to be kind of left behind in a way.
Yeah. And so, I would say there's probably like 3 steps, maybe a fourth we'll get to, but like 3 steps. If you want to like go, you decide today's the day I'm going to start doing something. 3 steps. The first step is stop thinking about the technology, oddly enough, ironic, right? But think about, where do you want to be?
Yeah. The outcome you want to create. Yeah.
Yeah. What is that thing out there that you never could even think about before? Think about it, because now it's going to be possible. At least some version of it is going to be possible. So What is that thing? And really deconstruct it. I mean, all pieces of it, and go absolutely crazy. And then consider where technology can fit in, or just think about think about buckets of work that you do, and separate them out. And, if you say, oh, well, today we do 80% repetitive work, okay, and 20% competitive work. And what I really like is I want to flip that. I want to, well, maybe that's really aspirational, but okay, fine. Like, so now do that. And again, if you can't do this, if you can't go through this thought process, get help, talk to people. It doesn't have to be someone that you pay. It can be just colleagues. It can be people who are also on this same journey, because really everyone is on this same journey. So,
totally.
So step 1 is just that. And then step 2 is the technology. And again, this is where I'd say there is an issue, because there's no real unbiased place to go to get what's out there, right? Yeah, right. Sure. You can find it's not easy to find companies, first and foremost, but it's really difficult. You finally do find a company, and what do they tell you? We're the best. We're going to help you with everything. And you think, that can't be possible, right? Like, there has to be.
Everyone's the best.
Everyone's the best, right? And whoever you get first, they're the best. The second one, not as good, right? So you have to do some work. And again, there are people who can help sort of distinguish these companies and what they offer and how it can help you. But you have to do your homework, and don't settle for the first company you stumble across, because they are focusing in different things. Many of them are promising the world, because they're really open to achieving the world. But in the end, there's
no downside also. There's no incentive to not promise the world.
No,
right?
No. And I think, from their vision, they think they can be in everything. The question is, what are they going to do first?
Yeah.
What are they going to do second?
And what don't they know,
Correct.
Like, they, just like everybody else, they don't know what they don't know, right. To your point.
But amazingly, I've literally watched people as they go through these demos, and then maybe they get a piloting opportunity, and their eyes just like get really big, because for the first time, they're not thinking about AI as Chat GPT. They're thinking about something that was purpose built for them, that's safe, that's risk-free, like that. We know what works, we know what doesn't work. And all of a sudden they like, you can just see it. Like, they're going, oh my goodness. And then every time I talk to them, they go, oh, but what about this? And then the next time, well, what about that? Right? And oh my gosh, we can do this and we can do that. And you say, yeah, exactly. So eventually you get to a point where you narrow down the technology and you say, okay, it's the right price, the right whatever, we're going to pick it. And for most people, they think that's the end of the road. But there's a third step, which is the implementation. And again, this is such transformative technology that you don't just flip a switch. Like,
you're
just talking about. No, and it's going to rewrite all of your workflows. It's going to change your organizational structure. It's going to change the skills that you expect of people, some of which they will be able to evolve into, some of which they won't. It just depends. But you need people to say, okay, where do you need to be in 3 months? Let's take a piece of what you just acquired and let's show, like, really squeeze out what we can get out of it, all the value. Mm-hmm. And then let's go across all the elements of it And mind you, it's still developing too. So every day there's more coming in. And now
Right.
you're saying, okay, at 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, I think 24 months really to extract like really significant value out of it, which doesn't mean it's a bad ROI. Like for the price of like less than one person, you can usually pay for these systems. Like they're not expensive.
Yeah, you're saying that in 24 months, like you're going to get a return in the first year or the first 6 months. In 24 months, you're going to have like a 10x return or a 20, you know what I'm saying? It'll be a massive number that's going to be super, super transformative. But in most cases, I think it ends up paying for itself kind of almost out of the box if it's set up right and it's implemented right, to your point.
Yeah, and some of those ROI numbers that I play with are like embarrassing to say, so I don't say them because
I get
they're
it,
they're
but they are
unreal.
real.
They're
Yeah,
real.
but they're real.
They are real.
And I
So
think,
yeah,
yeah,
go
go ahead,
ahead.
please. No.
So that implementation piece is the one, and that is a space where these tech companies, they're not entirely qualified to do that work, right? They don't really understand the ins and outs of a corporate environment and how things need to change. And I
Totally.
mean, this is a space for real improvement. I've said to some of the companies I've worked with that they're all going to eventually create great technology, but the ones who really do well are the ones who connect with people, right? That the
Mhm.
irony of all of this is that the tech, which is supposed to be anti-people, it will actually win based on people.
100%. Um, that's kind of like our kind of current angle, for my company, that's kind of our current angle, like humans at the heart of compliance. If you can give people better, like if you can let people use the technology better, then they're able to actually generate the business results that move them from cost center to business enabler, which is kind of just shorthand from becoming this, this force of good within the organization. In any system, there's a bunch of volatility. Volatility is just risk, right? And so as any system's volatility level or like as the volatility drops, then the risk of that thing drops, right? That's a huge concept in finance, in portfolio theory, as you can, eliminate risk and generate the same return. That's obviously like a better investment. That translates into a business, and a business is just all these processes. It's like a portfolio of a bunch of different quote unquote investments that are just all these little, all these different, policies. If compliance can be this sort of force that like lowers that volatility, that like rattling in the engine, well, then that car is going to move a lot faster. Um, why do you think the implementation thing is like it makes sense on why it's so important, but why do we always get it wrong? I mean, I see it and I see it in my own, I see it all the time because, everything is to me, it's all persuasion and it's all change management. I have to get somebody to do something different, whether it's buy something or adopt a new process internally or whatever. It's all change management. And it seems like that last mile ends up kind of getting the least attention or people like assume I don't know. We underprice it. We underprice both like the effort it takes to do it right and like the importance of it in the sort of multivariate equation that is any like, change initiative.
Yeah. So I think the first biggest issue is that a lot of these solutions, historically anyway, have simply not been enough. Like if they could actually deliver on the promise made, anything close to it, people would be invested in it mentally and emotionally. But instead, I think what happens is a lot of these things look like sort of administrative pieces. They're not really adding value, or people don't see that value. And so they get it and they say, okay, just teach me how to use the thing. I'll do that. And then I'm done. And
Yeah.
and there isn't like, and then, and to be fair, if you're an employee, your job is not, that is your job. Your job is to just get in the system and use it. But if you're in management, your job is to lead that change.
Yeah. Right.
And I think people, again, they get stuck in their day to day. Maybe they weren't the ones that asked for it. They don't see the value in it. And so they just do nothing. And the companies that are offering this technology are not following up with them. They're
Yeah.
not
They're not like
saying,
building that bridge.
no,
yeah.
No, like I would, another thing, like I've said to some of the businesses I've worked with is, hey, you should be able, when this is all said and done, you should be able to go to your clients and you should say to them, tell us about the value you're getting out of it. And then the next year, go back and say, now I know you've already had this, but what's more value you're getting out of it? And that means there's like a handshake. There has to be communication.
It's a partnership.
You
Yeah,
don't
right.
you don't just wipe your hands and say, okay, you're using it, call with any questions. And I think that's how most systems, at least my experience, I mean, I've dealt with like PLMs and, they promised the world and boy, they were just like a 2 to 3 year headache.
Yeah.
But it was never really about value. It was because there was one person in a company who stood up and said, we need this. Somebody believed them, was willing to write the check, but they never really got people on board. I see this differently, right? Like I think if you take a compliance function where people have people across the company maybe a little bit negative to compliance people because they feel like they're being squeezed and you have to do this. And now you're saying, we're going to help you. We're literally going to help you because we're going to use this technology. Oh, and by the way, here's a really interesting thing. We may not have to be the ones who work with you on this because you might be able to just use the technology directly on our behalf. How would you like to not see us for a day? Right?
You hate me, guess what? You never have to see me again. How's that?
And suddenly you'll be loved, right? Like that's and I think if those incentives are there, there's a greater incentive to implement. But again, you need a little bit of help on how to do it effectively and how to structure it into your life that doesn't really have time for it, except that it should have time for it because you're creating that time by using the technology.
Yeah. There's just this, it's such an interesting kind of problem or question, it's like, it's important, but it's not urgent. So like you said, you get caught in the day to day, or you think you explain it and you think you have buy-in and then you don't, and then people don't end up using it. Or, like you said, you're pushing a change that someone doesn't want, and they're ostensibly putting up, roadblocks for it. Like these are all, these are kind of all headwinds in that last sort of implementation bucket, these like sort of impediments that cause the vision that you're, sold on to not ever be realized. And then you kind of end up inadvertently sort of creating, I don't know, you end up getting some egg on your face. You end up winding up in this like less powerful position or less secure position because this big bet you made doesn't ever pay off.
Yeah. And we will see who the real leaders and who the real pioneers are here very soon. I see,
exactly.
It's really interesting, in the nascent phase of these technologies, you get these design partnerships and immediately you say, okay, are these people you really want to work with at this phase? Right. And there are the ones who just say like, oh, I see it. I get it. I am all in on this. And this is my priority. And you say, yep, those are the ones. And they're going to go on and do great things. And other people just may not have the comfort level to get there. And companies are going to have to reckon with that, really.
Yeah.
Let's
go back to that first one. So we talked about these sort of 3 steps. That first step, or maybe it was like a little bit before the first step. Like maybe it's the thing that we have to overcome in order to kind of start engaging in this first step. And you talked about at the start of our conversation, I don't like it. I don't trust it. It hallucinates. I don't want it anywhere near me. It's going to take all of our jobs, right? Like those objections. How do we get those objections unstuck? Because if somebody stays sort of calcified in that mindset, they're never even going to be able to engage in step 1, 2, and 3 is going to be, 3 is never going to happen. You know what I mean? What do you think is at the source of those things? Is that a personality type thing? Is that a wiring? What is it? And how do we help people get out of it?
Yeah. I mean, look, compliance people tend to be some pretty significant skeptics. It's kind of their role, right? Like going back to that kind of policing idea. The thing that brought most people into compliance was that ability to deal with black and white and to be critical and to be skeptical and to look for where the holes are, the gaps, and to find them. And you get credit for that. That's doing a good job to a point. And that level of skepticism, I would say, is used rather effectively in this moment. And quite frankly, it's like anything else. It's wonderful to have an opinion about something, but if you haven't tried it, what opinion do you really have, right? Like you just have worry. That's all you have. So until you get people in front of like literally seeing it, I've had so many theoretical conversations with people and they're like, well, I don't know. It's this. Well, have you seen it? Like, have you actually, why don't we, next time we talk, let's actually you're going to look at it. And then they look at it and they go, oh, okay. And then they go, but there's still this, we've got hallucinations or whatever. And then it's like, okay, next time we talk, we're going to go through we're going to show you exactly what it knows, what it does well. We're going to show you its effective rate, right? And effectivity rates. And it's like this stepwise process. There are very few people who just in one conversation say, I get it. Let's go. So,
I mean, those people, to your point, if you ever come across a person like that, they've already done a bunch of work on it themselves. They've already kind of dipped their toes in the pool. They've already gotten some comfortability on the bounds of it, the limits of it, the controls, quote unquote, that need to be in place in order for, it to be a useful tool. I mean, you can smash your finger with a hammer. It's not like we don't drive because of the risk of getting into a car accident. You try to control for those risks in any endeavor that you pursue, and any tool that you leverage. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I guess, people are sort of people. This is all somewhat normal, and it is a process. And we see there's usually, some people who are early adopters and some people who are late adopters and some people who will never. And, there's percentages of each in any dynamic situation. But I would say for most people, if they get it in front of them, if they can actually see it and begin to digest it, a lot of their concerns go away, because most of those concerns are based on false reality, right? Again, they're looking at it like, oh, it's Chat GPT. Like, no, these companies aren't spending millions of dollars to use Chat GPT. They're developing something that is for you to address all of those problems. So I think people just need the ability to access it. I keep thinking that there's going to be this sort of tipping point where everyone starts looking around and going, wait a second, my friend over here is using it and that colleague is I better do this, right? But it's taking more time than not. The ones who seem to be the early adopters have a different motivation from a business perspective as well. So I would say businesses that are growing like crazy, they have an incentive to somehow, in their mind at least, become more efficient, more productive.
So that might be sort of localized, kind of culture based, or just kind of, trade wins in that sort of environment or something that are helping to push them, forward.
Exactly. And then there's the other end of it, which is if companies are in massive cost cutting mode, nobody wants to be left with half the people and the same amount of work. So those people are definitely incentivized to look into this further. And then there's kind of everyone else, which is most of everyone. And they're just kind of just moving along through their day, companies up a little, down a little, no big shaking of the tree, and they're just going to coast.
Yep. Until it's too late. I think those might be the people that are most at risk. It is interesting though. So we're launching this new third-party risk true AI platform. And dude, it's crazy. I mean, it's kind of some of the stuff that you're talking about. I mean, you want to talk about going from repetitive to competitive. The third party risk area of any compliance program, it's all repetitive and it's all drags on the business. The business wants to bring on this vendor and it takes 2 weeks and they want it turned on 2 weeks ago. And we don't want to cut the corners, right? We don't want to sacrifice quality for speed, right? So it's super ripe for it. And this is not a pitch for this thing. I'm just trying to kind of talk about. So we're going into beta and we're having conversations with people. And I'm like probably the most naive person I know. I just expected anybody that signed up for the beta, they would be like that group you were talking about where they're like, I get it. And some of the concerns that I'm hearing, like we had a conversation with a guy recently, and he was very worried about like the hallucination risk and all that kind of stuff. And like we, of course, to your point, this is not just freaking ChatGPT with a wrapper around it. We've tried to account for those things to give visibility into the audit trail and like any conclusion that it makes in filling out a form. You can click on it and see like the snippet that it's based on, right? Like all the things that any compliance person would, care about. And you just said, this is what kind of spurred this on. You just said many times some of the concerns that people kind of scream most about are based on like a false sense of reality. Things that have been controlled for, like cars have airbags now and seatbelts, right? This is not like us barreling down the road, right? Like there's some protections that are starting to get built into these sort of specialized applications that can truly allow you to move from 2 months to 2 minutes, or repetitive to competitive. I've just been surprised at the risk aversion that is still present. I don't want to violate my AI policy. It's like, well, a compliance company. Well, I'll say, I'm going to speak for myself. I would never commercialize something and put millions of dollars into the development of something if it was going to violate, most all AI policies. Like that's absolutely insane. I'm not saying that it's a stupid concern that people have by any means, but I've just been sort of, again, my naivete is sort of I wear that on my sleeve. I've just been surprised that people are still referencing this thing from whatever 3 or 4 years ago of the lawyer who got disbarred for, relying on a hallucinated output. First of all, that's on the lawyer first and foremost. Okay. Just like, if their intern, gave them a brief that they didn't check, it's the same level of negligence. They would have been disbarred for that to the same extent that their, over reliance on the AI output would be. But it's just kind of interesting. And I just wonder if when people are finally, in that middle part of the bell curve you just described, if when they're looking around, they're like, oh crap, everyone is kind of doing it, if it's going to be too late because of the position that compliance is typically in most organizations.
And they may very well be too. It may be. I think another piece I didn't mention, but I think is relevant, and I see this even from the people who are ahead of the curve. They don't know exactly where they stand within their company. So there is a perception by some that they're taking a risk by going there. So like when they have to go up in front of their executives and say, here's what I want to do. I need a little bit of money to jumpstart this. That's a nerve-wracking experience. If the company has a position that says, everyone's going AI, we're all, we're going to push
juice it.
That's easy. That's easy.
Yeah.
In fact, like if you don't do it, you're dead. But that's easy. But not all companies have that.
Right.
And so there are a number of reasons to be hesitant at various points, right? Like you can be gung ho at the beginning, but you gotta stick with it. It's so easy. There's so many exits that you can take if you want to take them, or if you just get nervous. Like it's
a highway with a ton of off ramps. Totally.
It really is. And so I think, inertia on an individual level and on a macro level is what's going to change this. That's where I keep thinking there's the tipping point. And I think we're very, very close to it.
I think
it's
so.
going to take that many because the gains are so significant, right? If the gains were 5% and people would say, I just got 5%, most people would say, whatever. Doesn't matter. It's not going to impact my life. Move on. But when you say the gains are 50%,
or 20x.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a different landscape. Now, I will say, I gave you sort of 1, 2, 3 kind of this, right? But there's one piece that actually, to the point of exits, right? If you want an exit, I'll show you an exit. I did all my work. I did all this. I'm ready to go. I found my system. I know what I want. There's no money for it. I can't do it. And I said, okay. And this is a conversation I've had with the AI companies. The timing of this is really interesting because if there's no money in the budget, it's not happening. Like there would have to be an exceptional reason that they would be granted any money now. Whereas on the cycle of usual budgets, right? Like everyone's going to go in August, September time, or usually that's what it is. They're going to put in for next year. So the thing that wraps those three steps in a bow is put money in your budget. Because if there's no money in your budget, none of this matters. Like none of it. So everyone today should be thinking about whether they have access to money or create access to money now. And if they can't, August, September, it's got to be a line item. It should cover those three steps I talked about. And that would enable them, in theory, to do all this work this year so that January 1st, they can cut a check and they're moving. Instead of, well, maybe it's 2028. Because I don't know, right?
So I think this is this is an important conversation. I just think companies in general, they always have money for the things that are important. You always have time for the things that are important. You always have money for the things that are important. So then it becomes, maybe I'm off base here, but then it becomes a question of your conviction and your willingness to push forward to get it, right? And so how willing are you to make your vision that maybe is sort of partially influenced by this tool to make your vision a reality? And what sacrifices are you willing to make? Not just in terms of I have to chop my arm off, right? Metaphorically, but are you willing to sacrifice, personal equity that you've built to push for something? Are you willing to sacrifice the anxiety that you have in your stomach, standing up for something in the face of getting a bunch of resistance? Are you willing to sacrifice jobs on your team? I mean, if we're talking about a 50% or a 20x on something, it's got to come from somewhere. Kind of to your point, let's just grant that there's no money for something. What I'm kind of coming into, or what I'm kind of trying to get to, is in order to achieve and embrace this thing, we have to get out of this sort of government thinking that seems to plague a lot of compliance departments. And it seems to sort of correlate with profit motive. And what I mean by government thinking is any government agency has no incentive to not spend their budget. They have no incentive, right? Because they're not profit driven. I mean, you see the same issues in nonprofits, right? Your incentive is to spend all of your budget, and I want to get a little bit more budget, and I want to spend that, not to generate quote unquote profit or more bottom line. And it's kind of this circular thing. I think at some level, if we are trying to not be viewed as a cost center, which doesn't ever get the budget that it wants, or that it needs to have the impact, then we have to not act like a cost center in the attempt to get more resources. And so that means if you're not acting like a cost center, you're acting like a business person, let's say, just to kind of draw the parallel. Well, a business person is going to try to solve for outcome, and they're going to be seeing which pieces on the board they can move. Again, I'm just kind of, this conversation is so resonant with me because we're having dozens of conversations with people that are going to be part of this beta. In this we're talking to somebody that had 10 or 15 people on their team, and they have an offshore team that's doing all of this manual work. And this platform would literally you don't need all those people. They would just be doing the competitive application of risk on the item. So much stuff is automated. But I was ostensibly, this was another gentleman we were talking to. I was kind of seeing that he couldn't wrap his head around having to let some people go. It's if you this would cost it would cost one head, and you probably don't need 7 of those heads. So it's an opportunity. Again, I'm not saying that it's easy to fire your team, or it's maybe softer to hear you can repurpose that team to add more value, kind of to the point you made about 10 or 15 minutes ago. But getting out of that old mindset that many of us have been sitting in for so long, that sort of government mentality thing that a lot of people are subconsciously in that kind of a mindset where they can't really think about the gains that they would be able to have, I think ends up being another headwind, or kind of creates some kind of implicit incentive to take one of those off ramps before they might need to.
Yeah and imagine for just a second though that you do think you need to eliminate people come and go quite frequently. There's a big difference between laying people off and not backfilling when someone leaves. There's a huge
good point.
right?
Good
In
point.
terms of like how people feel about it. If
Yeah.
you're out there chopping heads, that's not a nice position to be in. I totally understand that. I've been there. It's not fun.
Same. Yeah.
But there is natural attrition. And as that goes, if you're thinking about it, if you're prepared and you say, "Ah, there's the money. I just unlocked this. I'm going to go buy something that's going to help do all sorts of things." It's not that difficult. The next thing though you have to do is you have to start convincing people that an investment from your area is better than just handing over the savings to other parts of the company.
Great point. Great point. That's right.
That's a tough one, right? Because the logic across any company is sales and marketing. Sales and marketing drive revenue. But yet, I think we all understand that in regulated spaces and even beyond, just in terms of company standards, brand, image, that sort of thing, it's not just sales and marketing. And there's that space in between where you say, "Gosh, wouldn't it be great if we had a sales and marketing person who understood some of the compliance pieces?" Yeah, those could be really successful people. Well, equivalently, let's go from the other end of that. Wouldn't it be
Yeah.
great if we had compliance people who had a knack for sales and marketing? Yeah.
Right.
And that's what we're talking about, right? Like, what is sales and marketing outside of, I mean, yes, I know people get degrees in it. I'm not trying to poo-poo it at all, but like, you understand what your business is offering. You understand how it works. You understand what the competition is doing. Wouldn't be terrible if you understood levels of enforcement and other things. And suddenly you can
Sure.
say, here's how we compete.
Right.
There's nothing that prevents a compliance person from presenting that type of information, right? That's what we
Yeah.
talked about a year ago. Nothing's changed.
Yeah. And part of sales and marketing is understanding your audience, understanding your ideal client, and being able to speak in a way that is compelling to them. To your exact point, like if you don't have that skill internally as you're fighting for budget or you're trying to get buy-in or you're trying to get the thing that you bought actually implemented, then you're not going to be able to get things unstuck, or the odds of you kind of hitting one of those impediments is just so much higher.
And that's where I worry about anyone who comes down from the top and says, we're just going to be more profitable. Because I don't think you cut your way to growth. And I think that others are going to figure out how to become more competitive using technology. And if you're just in it to cut, that in the short term might be great. Your EPS might do just the right thing, but you're going to find yourself out of the game.
It's short-termism.
I genuinely believe that. And so, I think there's some learning all over. And the answer is probably somewhere in the middle, right? Like you can be more profitable, you can be faster, but you can also be more competitive. And if you don't give that a try, good luck. Good luck.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. It feels like this is like the most exciting time of my life right now, just in terms of like how easy it is, or how I have all these ideas about stuff, and oh, wouldn't it be cool? Wouldn't it be cool? It's like, yeah, but I needed so many people to do that. And I'm just saying from the context of my own business. And I've seen, a friend of mine is a great example of this. My friend Hema, she runs the compliance department at a big tech company. And man, she is a force. Like she came into this thing and she is a total explorer, total pioneer. She's just embraced this stuff. And in doing so, she's able to do a lot more interesting work with her team. Some of the things that they build have really moved the needle. And then as a knock-on effect, she's like positioned herself so strongly within her organization as somebody who quote unquote gets it. Somebody who you're at a tech company, move fast, get the job done, be more competitive. But it came from that sort of root, that initial kind of mindset of like embracing the change, not fighting against the change, not lagging behind it, but seeing like, okay, cool. How can I leverage this, this new tool or this new technology to get my job done in a more kind of meaningful way? I mean, she's like a great archetype for what we're kind of talking about. Somebody who is gonna, who's like embracing it and really driving value, trying to get more competitive and kind of delete out the repetitive things, not do them, kind of to your point, but do them in a more sort of, quick way so that a larger proportion, that instead of spending 20%, you're spending 80% on adding value, putting these unique gifts to work. I mean, there's so much time spent on just like pushing papers around and connecting things and it's like that can't be why we exist. We have to exist to like apply the unique skill set. Like remember in Taken where he's like, I'm a man with with a certain set of skills. It's like, we have a certain set of skills. We need to like put those to work if we're ever going to elevate out of this hole of anti-business or cost center or whatever the moniker you want to use is.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's there for the taking. Like and companies will benefit for sure. I mean, I think a lot of us are going to have to dig pretty deep. Right? This is not normal business, and that's going to be hard for a lot of people. And I understand just how hard that is. But again, it starts to me at the top. And if the leadership pushes on people and really says, okay, let's see what you're capable of. We've never tested you before. Like, we've never put you.
Totally. We've never even thought of you in this bucket. Yeah.
So like, you did this every day, which is great, like super important, but that's all we know that you can do. And I'm certain that people will blossom. They will come out of their shells and they will say, wow, I didn't know that. Like, because what is this concept of like business? It's so nebulous, right? Like suddenly, if you said, I'm a compliance person, but actually business, I like business. Like, okay. And you have some skills for understanding business. Okay, great. Then let's use it. Like, you don't need an MBA to have some common sense to apply what you already know in a better way. And I think we're going to see that over and over. It's
really an exciting time, not just kind of, kind of across business, quote unquote, but just in our space of like, what's possible. What's possible right now is, I don't know, it's freaking exciting. If somebody's scared, they need to like reprogram that chemical reaction that's happening in the brain and reframe that as excitement, because there's like just so much to get excited about.
I know. And so there's another piece of this off to the side, which I just want to say for a second, but it is that, think about all the companies, usually smaller ones, startups, whatever, that, maybe they know that compliance is a thing and whatever they need to do, but they don't really prioritize it. Maybe they do none of it. Maybe they do a little bit of it, but to them, it's like, we're not going to worry about that right now. We know that it's going to be too complicated, too costly, too cumbersome, but now you have all this technology that comes in. And I would argue that we are in the process of democratizing compliance. Because if you can get this information now for, let's say, a few $1,000 as a startup, you have no excuse, right? Like, you can be in. Now, you don't have to be in all the way. We all understand that compliance is shades of gray. But, there's a big difference between 0 and 75%. We can debate the challenges of going from 75 to 100. That's hard. That's really hard. But 0 to 75 is actually just some like basic principles with some basic infrastructure, and you can do it. And now all of a sudden, here's these systems, and as they mature, they will also, I mean, right now they're hardly incentivized to go after the tiniest clients, but it's going to come. And suddenly they're going to say, "Oh, you've got $5,000 a year. You can jump in, and you're going to be pretty compliant. It's not going to be perfect, but you don't need an organization around this. You just need some people who know how to use it, and you'll be able to." So, if you're in government,
that's a great point.
Or if you're in a trade association, let's say, keep your eye on this. Like, this is what they should be pushing for, in my mind. Like, they should be partnering on any level with these companies, because with an understanding that it's going to help industries as a whole. And it will become pretty obvious. And those who don't are the nefarious ones who, we're going to do what they were going to do anyway. Right. So, but
it's a small percentage. Yeah, that's right. I mean, man, awesome conversation as usual. Hopefully it won't be another year until we connect on here. Where can if people need some coaching or people want to pick your brain a little bit, where should they reach out to you?
They can find me on regulatoryavenues.com. That's an easy one. Also on LinkedIn, of course, and they can find me anywhere. I'm everywhere. I've got
You're everywhere,
articles
dude.
coming out. I've apparently there's a podcast that they're listening to right now. So, this is,
Yeah. So start here
it's
and then
in.
find some more on regulatory avenues or LinkedIn. But man, every time you're on, it's just a great conversation. It's like so thought provoking. And I think this is the message that people really need to hear right now. Because if you have not embraced it like Hema, you better get on your horse. You better start dipping your toes in the pool. Come on in, the water's fine is what I would say.
You said it well. You said it well. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, man. See ya.
Take care.